So he is an amazing monk, lecturer, and the first ever Hindu chaplain for the Columbia University and New York University. And he speaks and inspires many people at the nation's leading universities, yoga studios, and retreat centers, inspiring audiences with India's timeless spiritual wisdom. Prabhuji was introduced to Krishna consciousness in the 90s and is a disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. His unique approach combines teachings of the ancient classic, the Bhagavad Gita, with examples that are relevant and practical from the 21st century. He uses his spiritual experience to encourage people to live a more balanced and wholesome life. And if you all have read Prabhuji's amazing book, Closing the Acts, you know how his examples are so easy for us to follow and how it can be really helpful in our everyday lives. So today, Prabhuji will be speaking on the topic of mind. Is it our friend or enemy? Based on chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita. So thank you so much, Prabhuji, and Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, I mean, just a couple quick corrections on that. My bio, it's a little outdated. I'm not a monk right now, and I'm no longer the Hindu chaplain of anything. So, but everything after that was 50% accurate. So I'll get you an updated bio.
Sorry, Prabhuji.
That's okay. That's all right. But yeah, somehow people still want me to be a monk, but I'm sorry, I can't do anything about that. That phase is gone. But I guess we'll start with a short kirtan, right? And then get into the verse.
Yes, sounds good.
Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Giridharadhari Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Giridharadhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Giridharadhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Giridharadhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Giridharadhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Giridharadhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare
I think it seems like we've lost the audio, or is it on my end?
Yes, Prabhuji, even we cannot hear it.
Okay. I'm gonna try and text him.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you now, but your video seems to be frozen, which is okay. I think we're gonna request everybody else to turn off their videos to just save on the bandwidth because you're on the phone, and see if you can. Yep, we see you now.
Okay. I basically logged off from my phone and logged in from my computer. So
Okay,
that's what it took a little moment to do that.
gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you again, Ramajay Prabhu, for inviting me to speak. So Om Gyana Timidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaiham Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pachadine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatadine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're reading today from Bhagavad Gita chapter 6 called Dhyana Yoga verse 6. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'll read the Sanskrit once and then get into the translation and purport. Bandhu atmatmanas tasya yenatmaivatmana jita anatmanastu sat rutve vartetatmaiva satruvat. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Purport. The purpose of practicing Eightfold Yoga is to control the mind in order to make it a friend in discharging the human mission. Unless the mind is controlled, the practice of yoga for show is simply a waste of time. One who cannot control his mind lives always with the greatest enemy, and thus his life and its mission are spoiled. The constitutional position of the living entity is to carry out the order of the superior. As long as one's mind remains an unconquered enemy, one has to serve the dictations of lust, anger, avarice, illusion, etc. But when the mind is conquered, one voluntarily agrees to abide by the dictation of the personality of Godhead, who is situated within the heart of everyone as Paramatma. Real yoga practice entails meeting the Paramatma within the heart and then following his dictation. For one who takes to Krishna consciousness directly, perfect surrender to the dictation of the Lord follows automatically. So this is one of those verses in the Bhagavad Gita which is so relatable to somebody who's been practicing Krishna consciousness for a while, or this is a verse that you can quote to an outsider as well. Someone who knows nothing about Krishna consciousness, maybe doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in spirituality, but if you tell them this verse, they'll be like, yep, I agree with you. The mind can be one's best friend or one's worst enemy. I've quoted in so many corporate seminars, and no one ever has disagreed with it. I just tell them I heard it from monks. I just don't say I heard it from Krishna. So, because Krishna was a monk as Lord Chaitanya, so that's not completely incorrect, right? So, yeah, and he's the topmost renunciate too. So I think it's still fairly accurate. But this is one of those super relatable verses that is relevant to anyone and everyone, whether you are a devotee, new devotee, existing long-time devotee, or a complete atheist. I think everyone can agree that the mind can be one's best friend or one's worst enemy. And really, the more it says here, one who cannot control his mind lives always with the greatest enemy. And before that, it says, let's see. Unless the mind is controlled, the practice of yoga is simply a waste of time. And one's always going to be serving the dictations of lust, anger, avarice, illusion, etc. So our mind, if you think about it, it's such an amazing instrument that we have. It's an absolute amazing instrument. And our entire life is determined by how this functions. Literally, our entire life is decided by how this functions and how well this functions. If it's functioning well, we can be happy. If it's not functioning well, we won't be happy. In one sense, that is the simple formula that applies to everyone's life. Simple. People are trying to figure out how to be happy in this world. And there are books written about happiness. There are seminars given on happiness. People are charging so much money to talk about happiness. But actually, the Bhagavad Gita tells us the secret to happiness and distress in this one verse. Literally. Literally, this is not an exaggeration. I'm not exaggerating in any way. I'm just speaking from as a person who has plenty of experience with the mind. And I think we all do. If our mind isn't properly trained, isn't properly taken care of, we will not ever be happy. Right? We really don't have enemies outside of us. Well, okay, so we won't deny that other people can make our life miserable. So let's not deny that. Okay. People can be there who are envious of us or who just dislike us for whatever reason. They can make our life miserable, right? Maybe they sabotage our work in some way, take credit for what you did in the workplace, or just maybe gossip about us, right? People can do so many things to hurt us. So that's there. Our family members, you could do all kinds of things for them and they still don't appreciate you and they still remember like the little bad thing that you did or didn't celebrate the birthday in exactly the way you wanted them to, and then they're going to remind you of that year after year, and you're pulling your hair out trying to do everything right. So, right, people around us are what we also call adibhotik, right, miseries. There are people around us that will give us some pain. That's there. And also we can't ignore that there are other things that disturb us, like adidevika. I mean, we're all understanding the adidevika in a very real way right now because of the pandemic. And even without that, we've all had colds and backaches and headaches and broken limbs and pulled muscles and back spasms and all kinds of things. As you get older, the menu becomes bigger. As you get older, you get more options actually for all the great things. In the beginning, the menu is very little, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You're like, wow, so many choices. You go into a restaurant, you look at all those choices, you're ecstatic. But as we get older, the menu we don't want it to be so big actually. So, all of these things, our body can cause us problem, other people can cause us problems, Mother Nature can cause us problems, physical ailments can cause us problems. But really, nothing can make our life as miserable as our mind can. Like really, there's nothing that can make our life as miserable as our mind. And how does it do this? It's amazing, right? Like, Krishna just kind of created us, created the universe, created the law of karma, and then to execute the law of karma, so to speak, or to give us what we deserve, he gave us a mind. He's like, that's it. That's all you need to to deal with your karma for the most part. And how does our mind, I think we all have enough experience of how it's been our worst enemy. And I think one of the simple ways to understand how our mind has been our worst enemy and will continue to be our worst enemy unless we really try to do something about it. One way is obviously it can't let go of the past. It's incredible. Like a lot of great things have happened to us in our life, haven't they? Like a lot of good things have happened. And also a lot of painful things have happened. How many times do we sit around thinking about all the great things that have happened versus how many times the negative things that have happened keep popping up in our head? Our mind actually goes to those dark places a lot more than it goes to the positive places. And that's a simple way of how it's our worst enemy right now. It keeps going through it replays those negative instances over and over and over again. And it just causes us so much pain and suffering all over again. Now, it's interesting because whenever that painful thing happened to us 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago, it happened once and it was painful. But how many times have we increased our pain by replaying that thing over and over again? Just living in the past. Because that instance is over. Now all the suffering is being given to us by our own mind or our lack of ability to control our mind. And it's not easy to let go of the past. It's easy to say, it sounds good, it sounds inspirational. Yeah, just let go of the past and live in the present. Yeah, and then you go back out and remember what happened like 5 days ago and you're back into living in your head again. Easy to say, very, very difficult and challenging to let go of the past. And so that is how our mind, like even the people who caused us pain in the past, they may be gone from our life, but we still remember. They might even be dead. But we keep them alive. We resurrect them in our mind. We just over and over again, we bring them back to life unnecessarily. And then, of course, we know if it's not in the past, we're just like worrying so much about the future, what the future holds. It's just this constant. It's one or the other. It's the past or the future. And that's what we're doing to ourselves all the time. Really, we're doing that to ourselves all the time. And of course, another way that our mind can be our worst enemy is just the whole idea of mental illness, right? Just the whole idea and sort of concept of mental illness. Now, of course, this is something a little bit more serious because it is an illness. Things like depression, anxiety, people struggling from like things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. These are all very real problems and they exist in the mind. And when I'm talking about depression and anxiety, I'm not talking about sort of some consequential thing, circumstantial thing that happened because of something. Maybe you didn't get the raise that you wanted and now you're a little depressed. Or you have an important interview coming up and now you're a little bit anxious about that interview, right? I'm not talking about that kind of depression or anxiety. I'm talking about something prolonged, something that you can't get away from, something that depression where you're having a hard time getting out of bed for just long periods of time, or you just aren't able to sleep because of this high level of anxiety that you're experiencing. So that's the kind of anxiety and depression that I'm talking about, which can be classified as mental illness. So physical illness is one thing. Mental illness is just on a whole different level because your mind creates your reality, right? We know that. Our mind creates our reality. For example, if someone tells you, hey, you know that person over there? Be careful of your stuff. They have a tendency to steal. You have no verification of that. And even if the person who says that to you, you don't know them so well, you overheard a stranger say that, now your mind has created a reality of that person. Such a strong reality that you vividly believe it, and every time you get around them, you'll completely hoard it. You'll watch your stuff extra carefully. And that could be totally false because the person speaking about them may just not like that person, so they're trying to spread false rumors. So our mind completely creates our reality. If you're fully convinced that the food that you're about to eat, for whatever reason, is going to cause you indigestion, you just won't eat it. Even if it's not going to do that. Our mind is so good at creating our own reality and making us believe it 100%. So mental illness is such a powerful thing, right? A schizophrenia, like you hear voices, bipolar disorder, where people go through extreme levels of elatedness and then depression, back and forth, back and forth. So our mind can create these very intense realities. And this can be classified as an illness. I was talking like the bodily situation is one thing, but our mind can create a whole different reality. It can make us see things that aren't there, make us believe things that aren't true. And so when this is happening long enough, then that's what can be classified as some kind of a mental illness. And so again, as I mentioned, this is not some sort of a circumstantial thing that because something unpleasant happened, now you're depressed. Yeah, everybody gets depressed once in a while, but is it happening all the time for weeks and months and years? It's not the kind of depression that Arjuna experienced before the battlefield, because that was caused by the current situation he was in. That means when that situation ends, he comes out of it. It's not the kind of depression that Yudhishthira felt after the war, where he was feeling guilty for all the death that had taken place. It's not the kind of depression that Arjuna felt when Krishna left the world, and Krishna and Arjuna and Yudhishthira felt when Krishna left the planet, because it happened in the moment. It's not an illness. So illness is something that's when you can't get out of bed and you just aren't able to take care of things. So, and I think that this is something that it's really important for us to be able to understand that our mind can be our worst enemy, and that if we or someone else is experiencing depression and anxiety, I think it's so important that we don't dismiss it. We don't tell them to snap out of it. I think it's important that we are able to understand that it is a real illness and a problem that needs a solution. Just like a broken bone needs a solution. You can't just tell somebody to snap out of the pain of a broken bone. You can't tell somebody to snap out of the pain of a toothache or a cavity. Right? We can't just tell people to snap out of it. We can't just tell people to chant Hare Krishna and it'll go away, right? Because the bone is not going to fix itself upon the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. So same thing with mental illness. Sometimes we feel like we can push through it. Like if we're going through something, we can push, but you may be just pushing yourself further down and further deeper into depression and anxiety. So I think it's important that we are able to recognize it in ourselves and also be able to recognize it in those around us. Because if we don't, and we dismiss it, we're dismissive of it in ourselves or in others, it can only cause more pain and more suffering and more harm and exacerbate the whole problem of that mental illness. So just like physical ailments require sometimes medicine and doctors, same thing with mental illness. It might need medication. We don't know. Meditation might help, and medication might help too. Prayer might help, chanting might help, but it might also help just talk to a professional therapist. It's not, so when we're talking about the mind can become one's best friend and one's worst enemy, we have to understand that while we're in this material world and we have this material body, we need to really pay attention to our body and our mind. We need to pay attention to both. We have both. This and the rest of this is all our vehicle. We've been entrusted with this vehicle. And when you have a vehicle, a car, you're changing the oil, you're taking care of the transmission, you're putting gas in it, you're taking it to the car wash, you're doing all kinds of things to keep it maintained. You're not just taking it to the car wash to make it look shiny. You're also opening up the hood and taking care of everything under the hood. You have to. Otherwise, something's going to start breaking down and breaking apart. So, what's under the hood? How often do we see what's under the hood? We've got a mind that needs to be paid attention to, that needs to be taken care of. Otherwise, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, let me read it once again, that unless the mind is controlled, the practice of yoga is simply a waste of time. Unless the mind is controlled, we really can't do anything properly. If our mind isn't controlled, and I'm not just saying controlled through chanting Hare Krishna and conquering envy and everything, I'm talking about making sure our mind is healthy. I'm not just talking about like controlling your envy. Oh, someone got a nice car and now I'm envious. Or someone's got more recognition, now I'm envious. That too. I'm talking about on a more like mental platform and not a spiritual level. I'm not talking about on the spiritual level. I'm talking about on the material, mental level. Because even Krishna spoke to Arjuna on somewhat of a material platform at a certain point. So we need to address both. The mental and the spiritual, the emotional and the spiritual, the physical and the spiritual. All have to be addressed. So not only is yoga not going to be possible, nothing's going to be possible. Someone who has emotional, mental problems, they're not going to have healthy relationships with their family or their colleagues. What to speak of being able to have a good spiritual life? Your mind is the instrument. And it's explained, without a proper healthy mind, we can't get anywhere. So let me read this here. The next verse, I'll just reach it. For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached. So if we haven't conquered the mind, how are we going to reach the Paramatma? We can't. And so we really do need to make sure that, and one thing is really important, that if we have some kind of mental illness, I know there's a stigma around it, stigma around mental health. We don't want to admit it to anyone. Like companies are offering mental health breaks, but people are reluctant to use those. Like it almost like letting people know that I've got like mental health issues. It doesn't just mean you're crazy. Your physical body may be depleted, your mind might be depleted. So it's okay. Let's not feel embarrassed about the fact that we may have depression or anxiety. Maybe that's being caused by the pandemic and you're working from home with you and your wife competing for Wi-Fi signal, and then your kids online competing for Wi-Fi signal, and you're on an important conference call trying to close a deal, and your kids like chatting with their friends and yelling and screaming in the other room. Yeah, maybe that's causing fights and arguments and all kinds of things. And then maybe your dog and cat are barking at the same time because your cat's frustrated that so many people are home because the cat thinks it owns the home. And so the dog's always happy if you're there. But so yeah, maybe you are being more anxious about that. And maybe we do need to talk to a therapist, a counselor, someone just to relieve our anxiety. That's okay. If your health is bad, you exercise, you work it off. We need something for our mind too. And I know that especially in Asian communities and Indian communities, mental health is really seen as a stigma, like it doesn't exist. Like if a child is going through depression, parents will just ignore it. Like, yeah, it's okay. You'll get over it. No problem. Just go out, go study some more, or go watch TV, or go play a sport or something like that. And if someone's not getting good grades, then maybe they'll just get pressured into like anxiety and depression. So I think we just need to be able to step back and understand that this is we have a very serious instrument. It has its limits. Everything in this on this planet in the material world has a limit. And if it gets pushed beyond the limit, it can crack and break. And once something cracks and breaks, it's never going to be at full strength again. Once you break a bone, it's always going to be a little bit delicate. I remember I used to play a lot of basketball growing up, and I started twisting my ankle. And each time I twisted, it would just twist easier next time, even if it fully healed. So it just doesn't go back to full strength. So we want to make sure, like, sometimes we hear of people, even devotees, committing suicide. Just think about what it takes for someone to get to a point where our life is the most important thing to us, for us to just like decide to end it. How bad has it gotten in the mind where we're just deciding to end it, actually? And how come no one else saw it? Because maybe we weren't even looking, or we just thought, oh, this person's crazy, this person's a little weird, or this person's aggressive. We just are ready to pass things off. Can you imagine if we just like trained ourselves to think in this following way, like, wow, this person maybe is acting a little intensely aggressively. I hope everything is okay in their life. Maybe they're going through some obstacle or challenge, and I'm wondering if there's something I can do to help. Imagine if we could train ourselves to think and behave in that way, as opposed to immediately placing a label on someone and making their situation even worse. Now we're judging them constantly. So we need to do what we need to do, and we can't always just have a spiritual solution to a material problem. I know this is a very popular topic that everybody likes to speak on: spiritual solutions to material problems. Well, how about just material solutions to material problems first? Let's do that first. Otherwise, we're not going to fix broken bones by doing an arti very devotionally and then hopefully our arm will heal by the time the arti is done. I think material solutions problems need material solutions, and spiritual problems need spiritual solutions. We're stuck in the material world, and we're affected by envy, greed, anger, pride, and lust. Okay, we need a spiritual solution for that, for sure. But if you're about to file bankruptcy, if your house is about to go into foreclosure, if you're being audited by the IRS, if your FBI is knocking on your door, Hare Krishna is not going to do anything. You need a professional to help you with those things. So material problems need material solutions for the most part. You can have a positive outlook on them through your spiritual practice. You can pray for spiritual strength to deal with whatever the outcome might be, and see that as a life lesson and growth lesson. When the IRS is pounding on your door, your doctor's giving you some crazy news about your health that's going to affect you for the rest of your life, you can use spirituality to stay positive, to remember Krishna, but you still need to implement material solutions to material problems. And I think this is really important for us to understand. We can't just immediately prescribe chanting Hare Krishna or eating more prasad to fix our material problem. It may not fix our problem at all. It may make it even worse. Right? You may have high cholesterol and says, oh, Prabhu, eat some halava and gulab jamun. It's offered to the Lord. It's Maha, actually, from Mayapur, offered at Mangal Arti. Here, this will take care of it. Maybe when you die, it'll help the soul, but in that moment, you have a painful death when the heart stops beating and things like that. So I think that we need to be a little bit practical when it comes to our material problems. And it's interesting, Arjuna, when he was in exile and throughout his life, he got boons from Indra, from Vayu, from Chandra, from Agni, from Shiva. And then when Krishna said, Arjuna, what do you want from me? Nothing, I just want you. Because I already took care of my other stuff. Now I just want you to be with me. He took care of his material stuff. Couldn't he have gotten the Pashupati weapon from Krishna? Was Krishna not capable of creating a Pashupati weapon? Is that only like Lord Shiva can do? Well, he said, no, go ahead, go over there and take care of it, because you're going to need it for your material problem. And Krishna still protected him on the battlefield, but he made him go and get all the boons and benedictions for what's going to come. Take care of the material problem. So the mind can give us lots of material problems, mental problems. We need to look out for ourselves and for others as well. And how do we make the mind our friend? That's a complicated thing, because our mind is not just limited to this life, right? We know from our philosophy, at the time of death, the mind, the intelligence, and false ego go with the soul to the next life, right? So this thing here, this enemy and friend, has been with us for a very, very long time. Oh my gosh, how long? We don't even know. And it's been causing us problems, and sometimes happiness and sometimes distress, for a really long time. How do we take care of our mind from a material? No doubt, chanting Hare Krishna, taking prasad, doing kirtan, associating with devotees, serving others, all very important to purify the mind of envy, lust, anger, greed. But when it comes to other things like mental issues and mental illness or mental diseases, we need to apply, whether it's medication, whether it's a therapist. For some of us, maybe we just need to take care of our health to improve our mind. Maybe you just need a good night's sleep. I heard this one story, really interesting. Soka Krishna Prabhu, some of you may know who he is, some of you may not. Many of you probably don't. It was a brahmachari living in the Radha Gopinath Mumbai temple a long time ago. He developed cancer and he passed away. But in his last few days, when he was completely in bed, couldn't move, couldn't do anything, devotees were gathered around him, and they were just constantly singing kirtan and reading to him and everything like that. And what was happening was, he was getting really, really frustrated and angry. He started talking all kinds of crazy things and just like pushing devotees' hands away, just like he didn't want to deal with them. And then one doctor said, you guys are chanting all the time, reading to him. He needs sleep. Stop the noise. Let the man sleep a little. Then they stopped. He slept. The next day he was normal. Not that his cancer went away, but he was able to like think normally. He was able to think properly, because the mind isn't going to be normal if we're depriving it of sleep and good food and positive relationships. It needs all of that to become our friend. We need to take care of our body for our mind to be healthy, and we need to take care of our mind for our body to be healthy. And another thing that's really important in terms of dealing with the mind is, now I'm not really qualified to speak on this. Well, let me just say I'm not qualified to speak on it, but I do believe in it, so I'll say something about it. Is we have to understand that when someone's mind is really disturbed, there may be reasons beyond even them that's causing them to be disturbed. They may not even understand the reasons. You may not understand it. If someone's just like all of a sudden acting and starting to talk in ways that's really unusual for who they are, and they've never talked like that, or their behavior changes somewhat suddenly, and you're just like, wow, what's going on? Or if your behavior is all of a sudden, if everyone's telling you, hey, how come you're so different now? You're so angry and irritable. You're saying such horrible things or difficult things. Maybe it's important to understand that there's something going on a deeper level that's causing you, like you weren't like that before, and now all of a sudden your personality's changed or something's different about you. Have to understand on a higher level. I'm going to read something here from the Bhagavatam, from the 5th canto, chapter 22. I'm not going to tell you the verse, otherwise everybody will get distracted and start looking it up. Because the moon is full of all potentialities, it represents the influence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The moon is the predominating deity of everyone's mind, and therefore the moon god is called Manomaya. He's also called Annamaya because he gives potency to all herbs and plants, and he is called Amritamaya because he is the source of life for all living entities. So the moon is the predominating deity of the mind. And the moon actually moves constantly. Every couple of days it's moving. And so the moon affects our mind, which means it also affects our mood. And so, yes, this is getting a little bit more into the whole, like the idea and philosophy of astrology. And some of you be like, I don't believe in that stuff. That's to each his own. You don't believe it, that's fine. Doesn't mean it's not there, right? So like for the next 300 years, they can predict exactly when the sun's going to rise. Like you can look up the sunrise for the next 5 days or the next 500 years. It's all calculated, right? It's all there. Krishna himself appeared in the Moon Dynasty. Lord Ram appeared in the Surya Dynasty, right? So when someone is somehow their moods has changed, it's possible that the moon is having a very negative influence on them. So we need to also understand astrologically. So there's psychologically, you can understand what's happening. Karmically, we can understand, but also astrologically understanding that the planets do influence us. The moon is giving life to vegetation. The moon is affecting the tides of the ocean. It is having an influence, a gross and subtle influence to this planet and all the living entities of this planet, not just the ocean. It's giving life to the plants. We know that. So it's also, Bhagavatam says, it is the predominating deity of the mind. So when someone is acting strangely or in a difficult way, you should understand maybe there's something, and again, I don't know enough of it to talk about it in detail. Maybe somehow the moon is in a specific portion of their chart that's causing them disturbance, along with other planetary influences, like Shani and Mangal. These can also have strong influence on the mind. Rahu can also have a strong influence in the mind. So sometimes it's just important to understand that our mind is being influenced by our karma, the people around us, the situations around us, and also from the planets in our solar system. We are all being affected by, there are multiple levels, multiple things that are influencing us. So before we go and judge someone for behaving in a certain way, we should know that they and us, we're all being influenced in a variety of ways. And just like if you are going through depression, anxiety, yes, it could help to see a therapist. It can help maybe to take medication. It's good to do perhaps some spiritual practice. And there are also practices that can be done to pacify the moon's influence on you. For every problem, there's a solution. That's my point here. For every problem, there is a very specific type of solution. It's not just like, well, there it is and too bad, right? That's your karma, too bad. No, that would be miserable. That would be a miserable philosophy, and I would not be part of that. But to every problem in our karma, there's a solution to it. But it's not always a spiritual solution. Spiritual practices can reduce some of our karma, but then there's also different types of practices that can be done to ease our karma in different ways. And again, if it's not something you believe in, perhaps, who cares about belief? Let's do some research, okay? Because belief could be, let's also forget belief. Let's just explore it with an open mind, because what you might find may give you a lot of solutions to a lot of problems in our own health or relationships or finances, all kinds of things. There are solutions to all kinds of things. And if our material situation isn't stable, then it's going to be very difficult for us to chant Hare Krishna. Because when you're chanting Hare Krishna, you'll only be thinking about your health, your wealth, your relationships. And when you're on the altar doing an arti, you'll just be thinking about the miserable financial situation you're in or your health and all these kinds of things. It may make you pray a little deeper. Sure, we won't take that away. But your mind's going to be so distracted that it's going to be really difficult to go deep in one's spiritual practice and spiritual life. And a big portion of our material life is determined by the health of our mind. If our mind is not healthy, if we have not taken care of our financial situations, emotional situation, relationships, all these things, the mind is going to be so disturbed that it's just not going to be able to focus on Krishna. Krishna says, always think of me, become my devotee. Yeah, but in order to always think of him, you got to take care of your stuff. He had Arjuna take care of his stuff. And Arjuna was who? He was like next to Krishna all the time. Like he just had to say Krishna and Krishna would just appear in front of him. Like that's the kind, I mean, they're traveling together eternally. And even Arjuna had to take care of his own stuff. He had to go around gathering weapons, doing tapasya and just all kinds of things. They all had to do everything to figure out their life. They had to figure out their life, basically. And so we need to figure out our life. We can't just say, oh, Krishna will take care of it. Well, what do you mean? Like, wait, I don't agree with that. I actually don't agree with that. What will Krishna take care of? What's he going to take care of? Tell me. Is he going to prevent your bankruptcy from taking place? Is he going to like magically heal your illness? He could, but does it happen? I mean, I know plenty of devotees who are dying from illnesses or struggling with finances. Well, how come he's not taking care of them? But is it even his responsibility to take care of them like that? Did he say that? I mean, I've read the Gita a few times. I haven't said that. Just, if surrender unto me and I'll take away your financial problem and your health problem and your mental illness and your relationships will all be perfect. Super advanced devotees are fighting like anything with each other. Well, where's Krishna? He's there, but he's not going to fix all our crazy nonsense that we're doing, bringing in our life. He never agreed to become our therapist, our marriage counselor, our accountant, our lawyer, our dentist, or our primary care physician. I don't think it's in the Bhagavad Gita. If somebody's seen it, please show it to me, because I'm not such a scholar on these things. I've been out of the ashram 6 years, so I've forgotten a lot of things that are in there. So I think it's kind of almost irresponsible to say, oh, Krishna will take care. And I know we say this all the time. I've said it a million times. I've stopped saying that though now. I'm like, no, I've got to take care of it. If Krishna was going to take care of everything, he wouldn't have put the Pandavas in a horrible situation for a dozen years. Like, he could have just gotten rid of Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra right from the beginning, and just the whole Mahabharata wouldn't have had to be written. All this, another book, right? Another book. Who needs, right? Another book. But like, he didn't take care. He was with them, but he wanted to show that you need to do your duty. And yes, he will help your soul go back up there, but that's when you die. But that's when you die. But until then, you got to take care of your stuff. You got to go to college. You got to get an education. You got to post your job resume everywhere, look for a job. He's not just automatically, you chant Hare Krishna, you get a job. Yeah, we got to take care of our business straight up. And then Krishna says in the 8th chapter, while you're doing your duty, then remember me. While doing your duty. So we have to do our duty and remember Krishna. We're taking care of the material. Krishna's taking care of our soul, making sure that we remember him. And then he reciprocates with us accordingly. That at the time of death, when those final breaths are being taken, if we've lived a proper life of devotional service described by the acharyas, and if we've genuinely made enough advancement, then Krishna will carry what we lack and preserve what we have. That's not going to happen if we've been lazy about our spiritual life or just leaving it all to Krishna. So those are my thoughts on this verse. And I hope I didn't say anything too controversial. If I did, hey, that's okay. That makes the class more exciting. Gives you more something to talk about at least. So anyways, we have some time for some questions. And if you ask me questions on astrology, I'm not going to be able to answer them because I'm not an expert. I believe in it. I follow it. It's helped me, but I can't really answer your questions on it. So you can try if you want to, but I may not have an answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Gadar Pandit Prabhu. Dear devotees, if anybody has any questions, you can either unmute your line or you can put your question in the chat. In the meantime, while they're gathering their thoughts, I do have a comment or a question. You know, sometimes it does help us to look at every situation, whether it's, most often it's difficult situations, to contemplate and say, hey, you know what, Krishna has a plan for me. That's why I'm going through such a situation. On the contrary, when you said, hey, Krishna is not going to take care of your XYZ problems, but you know, okay, I get that. But at the same time, Krishna has some interest, because that's why he put me in such a situation, right? So it seems contrary to each other, right? So how do you make sense of that?
I think it's okay to think that Krishna has a plan. We know Krishna has a plan. The whole world is moving in a plan because it's not just running chaotic, right? Like if we can predict when the sunrise is going to happen on which day in 500 years from now, that means there's a plan to the whole thing. So I think it's nice to think that and feel that. But you still did everything to take care of your health. Right? We can run around the planet taking care of our health and talking to the right doctor of every kind, or if it's a legal thing, you talk to every kind of lawyer, like, yeah, Krishna's got a plan, but I got to get busy here. And maybe he does, and maybe he doesn't. Maybe his plan is to keep remembering him. That's it. Just, hey, you're going through this. Keep remembering, I'm here. I'm here. Even if you go broke, Krishna's like, I'm still here. The Pandavas were broke, and he's like, I'm still here. But you're still broke. You're still sleeping on the forest floor, but I'm here. You might be eating leaves and roots. I'm still here. See me in the leaves and roots. Right? So he may have a plan, or maybe his plan is just to get you to think of him a little bit more, but doesn't mean he's still fixing anything. The goal is ultimately think of him. That is the ultimate goal of the Gita, right? To think of him. And not just to think of him when good things happen, because it's hard to think of him when good things happen, but we want to think of him when good things happen and bad things happen. And the point is of the Gita is to remember him as much as possible. But doesn't mean we neglect our duty in the process, right? So I hope that wasn't too vague of an answer.
Yeah, no, it is not. Actually, in fact, it's a similar comment Gaurav Prabhu wrote in the chat, very similar to what you just said. He said we should find material solution for material problems, but when those material solutions don't work, then we should surely seek spiritual solutions, focusing on the holy name of Krishna, who is present in all beings, who is our eternal well-wisher, and knowing one's being as pure awareness, which is part of Krishna, is one spiritual solution that helps us to be in the present moment, let go of the past, and alleviate anxieties about future. So it's very similar to what you just said. Do your duty. Krishna is here. Don't forget that. But we can't just raise our hand and say, hey, I'm not doing anything, because that would be like the ostrich putting a head in the sand.
Exactly.
Sometimes we also notice, like when you mentioned, you made a comment about no matter how advanced one is, and we judge each other, and there are conflicts and all that. We also see that sometimes we judge ourselves too much too, right? And make ourselves feel responsible for certain situation. Is that right? Is that wrong? Is that being too hard on ourselves? How do we get? And this is again going back to how the mind works, right? Because we sometimes over analyze a situation and we say, hey, I could have done this, I could have done that. Maybe everything is my fault, right? But that's like beating yourself over too much, right? So how do you balance that?
Well, I think one way is that's why I think it's really good to have peer level or slightly advanced deep friendships with individuals that can sometimes help us resolve something really quickly. Because when we're stuck in our head with a problem, it can just drive us nuts. It can be like a little hurricane in there. And maybe there's just a really simple solution. And maybe like a proper trusted friend could maybe just present an alternate solution. Like, I think you're being a little too hard on yourself. And the way you're pushing this, it's really affecting your relationship with your family. Maybe you need to back off. or look, like you haven't been able to sleep because of this for a week and you look horrible now. Maybe you need to like back off and just take it easy and not worry about it and just see how things go. You've tried your best. You're losing sleep already and you're getting sick because of that. So I think sometimes just like a little like outside help, just like I said, like a mental thing, illness, you need some outside help. We do. In our spiritual life, we need a guru. For a lot of things we need outside help. But something like this, just a good, mature friend, even a peer level, doesn't have to be senior to us, just equal level as good, mature human being can, even if it's not a devotee, just like a person that you're really good friends with at work who's really expert at certain things, can guide us, right? So I think that in itself can help us to sort of resolve things that we're just beating ourselves up over, and I think it's okay to push ourselves to a certain degree, but we also need to know where to draw the line. Sometimes we don't know where to draw the line, and that's where we might need that help.
Okay, thank you. I see Rasa Bhakti Mataji has a question. You can unmute your line and ask the question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Wonderful class. Thank you for that. And I have a quick question, Prabhuji. And you touched upon this too. Like, so with the pandemic, I guess like a lot of people are like having mental issues, like they're not able to cope with like not having opportunity to socialize with others, like especially like people who are extroverts, they like to, be with people. So if you see somebody struggling, like with being depressed because of the situation we are in, how can we help them? Because we can't just tell them, okay, like, you should just socialize because it's not safe. So then like, how do we help them? And you can clearly see that they're struggling, but then they don't want to like maybe talk to a therapist, or they're not ready for those kind of treatment options. So but as a, if you're seeing them like suffering and you want to help, how can you help them?
Well, I mean, one thing is yeah, if they're not ready to talk to a therapist, then obviously that makes it a little bit more challenging and difficult because they're not ready for outside help. If there's some way to explain to them, because there are right now, I'm seeing more and more, there's more online therapy options available. Actually, the business boomed actually as soon as the pandemic hit. So there are a lot of online therapy sessions available where it can be done just online. It's very confidential. There are companies that are offering this, and I think they charge some amount, but it's reasonable. So if you've already suggested that to them, then that's good. If not, maybe you can find a subtle way to suggest to them that, hey, why don't you try it out? And yeah, socializing isn't good, but if someone isn't willing to take help, it becomes harder. Because I mean, I'm an extrovert, and I also did struggle a lot during the pandemic. I mean, it's happening now. It's just, but when it first happened, because I get my energy by being around other people as an extrovert. That's where I get my energy and happiness, and just being around people. When I'm not around people for too long, I notice my mood is down. It's just kind of how I'm built. And so maybe if the person you're referring to is completely isolated, they don't even have an option to be with friends. Like what I was doing was I would get some friends together. We would go to the park and be socially distant. We'd all bring our own food and just have a picnic in a socially distant way, and just sit there and talk to each other, right? So, and also just making sure that the person is getting enough sleep, that they're exercising, they're eating a good healthy meal. All of these things can help improve one's mental health. Eat, diet, exercise, sleep, hobby, perhaps therapy if they can, in a safe, socially distanced way, socialize in some way, or at least maybe you and some others can check in on them. Just tell them like, hey, just check in on this person, see how they're doing. Don't make it sound like that they've got something going on, something's wrong with them, but just have a few people check in on them very casually. Just say, hey, how's it going? And then share your own struggles. Maybe that helps them open up about theirs. So just have a few people checking in on them. So these are some suggestions on how you can possibly help them.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
We also have a question from Ragakshi Mataji. You can unmute your line.
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful class, Prabhuji. So just one question. You mentioned about like how sometimes the things that have happened in the past, you think about it even now, and then you feel the same pain and same type of situation. You feel like, it is hurting. So how not to do that? Like how you can let go on your past and how you can move it on. I always have a question related to this. So I thought, let me just.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, first of all, to stop the mind. The mind is just completely crazy right now. It just does whatever it wants with our thoughts. It's got this hard drive of information about us, and it just keeps throwing things out at us. One thing that I try to do is, first of all, when you recognize that you're living in the past, I would just try to press, like, sort of like, imagine a remote control and you press stop. Just stop your mind from going any further. So, and then, you know how you like close out an app on your phone? Just push it out. And then really then tell yourself that by thinking, letting this play out, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get anxious, frustrated, depressed, and angry, and my mood will be off for the next 30 minutes or so. So let me stop it right now. And then but the thing is, the mind wants to go deeper and deeper. It wants to jump back into that craziness. It actually likes going there. Like a fly, you know what the flies like to land on, right? In a garden, there's flowers, but it finds the dirty part and it goes there. The mind likes to go there. Just stop it. And it's exercise to just stop. So, oh, okay, wait. Because you won't even realize you're thinking it. You won't even realize it. So first of all, you have to realize it and then just put the brake on and just take a moment to think of something you're grateful for. Just switch, go from driving in reverse, now go start forward. Think of something positive, do something else. I'm not going to entertain this right now. No good. So you could try that exercise and hopefully that'll help.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we have one more question from Lalita Madhavi.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you for such an amazing class. My question is, Prabhuji, sometimes you deal with, especially with the devotees, because I think with outside world, if you are upset with something or, everybody has their own nature and, sometimes it's hard to get along with some people, but outside world you can just let go, they can go their way. But in devotee community, the idea is that you learn to serve together. So like you said, that we try to switch off that plug, that hey, no, I'm not gonna dwell in the past. What happened. But then you see the pattern with certain devotees, that when you're working with them, because of their behavior or their personality, you're reminded of certain things over and over when you're working with them, and then it becomes very difficult to kind of cope up with that, because you have your experiences and then you have the hope that okay, things will change, things will change with like this devotee and things will get better, but that doesn't happen. How do you deal with that internally and externally?
Well, I think that I'm going to give a very practical answer, which I don't know if it helps or not, but if it's just going on for a long time and it's really starting to cause us a lot of anxiety and stress, I think that sometimes it helps us to step away from the situation. I mean, I think if I'm starting to lose sleep or getting overly critical, I mean, I don't think that kind of mood and attitude is even pleasing to Krishna. So like, let me not be with this person or in close proximity, and then just have a more peaceful mind. So my mind doesn't become my worst enemy towards this person.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I think. It's like, if it's constantly just like this year after year, then one person has got to be like, okay, you do it and I'm here to help, but you can go ahead and make the decision. Krishna's happier with you stepping back because you're more peaceful. Now you can chant properly as opposed to being angry at the devotee while chanting Hare Krishna, angry at Krishna.
Yes.
And Krishna happy with a peaceful Hare. Even if you're distracted, that's Krishna prefers that than like being angry at someone while chanting. Planning your day, that's fine. Getting angry at someone, not so fine, right? So I think that's one way to diffuse that situation.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Nice seeing you.
Good seeing you too. So I kind of need to head off now.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you so much. I think there are no more questions, so timing is perfect. We will just move into our next phase of the program with announcements and Narsingha prayers. But thank you for your association, and it's been a while since you were on our Sangha, so very, very nice to see you. And as always, very practical tips and guidance in your talk as usual, as well as in the Q&A session. And that is what we need. Yes, we have Shastra and we have all those things, but sometimes we forget the practicality of the nature of how to apply those teachings in our daily lives. So thank you very much, Gadadhar Pandit Prabhu, for joining us, and we will see you very soon.
Thank you, everyone.